All right, I think we're good.
Adam is coming, so let's watch for him too,
Yep.
Andrew. Okay. All right, everybody ready? You ready, Andrew? All right, so I'm going to call the advisory committee meeting to order on December 22nd at 7:30 p.m. on the dot. Hi, everyone. You see Claire?
Yeah, I
Andrew?
just promoted her.
All right, so everyone is here except for Adam and for Eric. Eric will not be here. He had a CEO emergency, and then Adam is definitely coming. So sorry about all the confusion at the last minute, but I didn't know if we had a quorum, so I was trying to make sure we did. We did, so that's good. Okay, so we've got a busy night. So now, Marcy and Tom, you will see for the first time how the departments work and what they tell us and stuff. So this will be a good night. This will be a good substantive night. So let's get the minutes caught up so we can get to the more important stuff. All right, so we've got three sets that we need approval. One is from the night of the town meeting when we met prior to that. Then we've got two meetings after that, including the one we just had with the Board of Selectmen. By the way, they have not been, that hadn't been approved either as far as the AG's office. So right now they're still the Board of Selectmen. All right, so let's start with November 1st, which is one that Claire sent a few days ago. It's very brief. There wasn't much to this one. This is where we met and talked about a little bit about Article 10. Tim basically told us what his plans were, and then we approved the revision of the advisory bylaw where we were going to be consistent with select board and make it chair and vice chair without the MAN on the end of it. So it's simple as that. So I thought, let's see, anybody have any issues on November 1st? I've got one tiny thing. Are you with us, Claire? Claire, are you there? All right, I think you're there. So line
I am.
20, okay, sorry. Line 25 at the end of it, it says certain language makes the article just say, put the word seem instead of looking like. I'm just trying to make it sound a little bit better. So it makes the article seem like it is promoting.
Okay.
Okay, that's it for me. Anybody else on November 1st as far as any edits? Okay, everybody's nodding their head no. Okay, so let's go ahead and just approve these and get this one out of the way. So Andrew, you want to make all the motions for the minutes?
Sure, I move that we approve the minutes from November 1st as amended.
Second,
All right. So Tom was the second, Claire. Okay, roll call vote. AP,
Aye.
Tim?
Aye.
Marcy?
Aye.
Tom?
aye.
And I'm aye. So 5-0 Claire on November 1st. Got one tiny little edit. Okay, now let's go to November 17th. Okay, I've got a few edits. Anybody else have anything?
Should go first, Kath.
Yeah, can you bring Adam in,
Sure.
Andrew? Okay, so who wants to, who said they've got an edit? Anybody?
You go first.
Okay, so Claire, line 29. It should say the effective date of the advisory bylaw change will be within 90 days of submission to the AG, which is why it's not done right now, or it will be done in December if it were 90 days after town meeting. Actually, that's January. Anyway, so it's 90 days after submission. So Jim had to get it in and then the 90-day clock starts. So just say that and then get rid of that next sentence because then it's redundant, the paperwork article, okay?
Mhm.
All right, so that's it for that page. Next page, I just want to correct how you're spelling Katura's name. So on the end of line 59, Katura is Keturah. Katura.
Okay.
Okay. And then 64, let's see. For example, the capital planning, they wouldn't decide how to redeploy the building. They would recommend how to deploy the building.
I'm sorry, line, which one, 64?
64. Okay, so it
64.
says capital planning would, you say decide, I say change the word decide to recommend.
Okay,
Okay, lots of people will help decide. Okay, line 99, that date is wrong. It should be student population as of 10/1/21. That's a date they always put the marker in the sand as far as all the things that depend on that date as far as population goes.
okay,
Got it? Okay, now, what you want to say there is, it's not that our student population has increased in Algonquin. In fact, ours has gone down, but Northborough's has gone down more. So it's all relative. And that's why, so our percentage has increased, but the total population has still gone down again. So if you could just word that, so you're just talking about the fact that our percent of the total population has gone up, but the total population has gone down.
okay.
Okay, which is not necessarily relevant. Okay, next page is fine. That's it for me. Anything else on November 17th?
I had, so Claire, for line 71, it's Jennifer Thompson from Capital Strategic Solutions.
Thank you.
I will
Okay,
put it
I try to find that on the town website and I couldn't.
Just put it in the chat for you. And then for line 77, I would just put the, just say you have $3 M. I would just put million, just to
Okay,
clarify for whoever reads this down the road.
you really think there's that many people looking? I hope so.
Never know. All right, any more edits?
On the 17th. Okay, if
Alright.
no, AP,
I move that we accept the 11/17 minutes as edited.
Second,
Tom seconded. Roll call vote, AP,
Aye.
Tim,
Aye. Aye.
Marcy,
Aye.
Tom,
aye.
Adam,
Aye.
Kathy's yes. So this one's 6-0, Claire.
Okay,
All right, the last one is the brief meeting we had on the 14th with the Board of Selectmen, the joint meeting. Okay, let's see. So let me start. Okay, so on line 36, Casey updated that AN will be advisor's liaison to the benefits budget. Claire, not the selectmen's budget, benefits budget.
okay,
Okay. Then next line 37, at the end of it, the amortization, and then put after that of the unfunded pension liability. That's what's being amortized. So they're trying to get it completely funded over time. That's why we've got such a big year-over-year increase. And I can tell you, I won't say too much because it's really not the topic for this moment, but I'm still surprised that with the market doing what it did last year, that the statement that they didn't have a good year doesn't jive for me. Okay, so that's all I've got. Oh, I got one more. So here's a name for you too. So on line 60, so Tony is Tony, and I may say it wrong, Schoener, Schoener, capital.
how come I went and looked, I could not find him
Yeah,
listed.
he's not on the website. I agree. So I texted Jason to get his name.
Oh, okay,
Okay, so Schoener. So they've got two people from capital, which makes sense. The ARPA committee. Okay. All right, anybody have any other edits on the joint December 14th meeting?
I just wanted to clarify row 36 with Casey updated that Aon will be advisory liaison to the selectmen budget. Is that different?
So I corrected that, Adam. That's, it should say to the benefits budget. So
Okay.
So it shouldn't have said that. So you're right to point it out. You're not doing the Board of Selectmen.
Okay.
Okay. So the Board of Selectmen budget, just for everybody who's new to this, is basically the townhouse. For most of it. Okay. All right. Okay, any other edits on December 14th? Seeing none, AP,
I move that we accept the December 14th minutes as amended.
Second,
Adam, did you do the second or Tom?
yes.
Adam, so that was Adam, sorry. Okay, roll call vote. AP,
Aye.
Marcy,
Aye.
Tom,
Aye.
Adam,
Aye.
Tim.
Abstain.
So Tim's abstaining and I am yay. So we've got 5-0-1. Tim, you're abstaining because you weren't there?
That's right.
Which is fine. All right, so we're caught up. That's great. Yay, yay, yay. Okay, so now let's get into 3 substantive budgets, big ones too. So we're going to do capital first, and then we're going to do police, and then we're going to do fire. So Jason Melanowski will be, let me see who's all here. Do you know who's all here?
Yeah, should I bring all of the capital people over probably?
Yeah.
All right.
Hi, everyone.
Hey,
Name?
it's Joe, there's Jeff, there's Tony. Is Lisa here tonight?
I just saw her. Yep, there she is.
There she is. There she is.
Wait, is pursuit room 5? Did I move that over by accident?
Oh, that's Karen. We just need to rename her.
Oh, okay. I'll rename her.
So Karen, why are you pursuit room 5?
That's it's a work virtual event, and I think it automatically attaches to my profile when I log into Zoom.
Karen, I spelled that right?
You got it.
Okay.
Thank you.
So Jason, do you want to introduce your committee to everybody?
Yeah, so I guess more as a formality before I even do that, I'm gonna call capital planning meeting to order. We do have a posted agenda. I see everyone present, all 6 of our members. I also want to acknowledge that we have a quorum of the Capital Planning School Research Subcommittee between Kathy and myself, and that is also posted in our agenda in case any of the conversation delves into where any of that's at. So I think we are fully covered there. So I think everyone knows Lisa, Jeff, and Joe from prior presentations from Capital. They are what I'll call some of our founding members of the Reinvigorated Capital Planning Committee last March in 2020. But we've been very fortunate to have Karen and most recently Tony join us due to vacancies that have been created on the committee. We still do have 1 vacancy, so if anyone knows of anyone that would be accretive to our group, it's a great group and would welcome any feedback or recommendations to the Board of Selectmen / Select Board in terms of a potential appointment. So I don't know if you want Karen or Tony to give any broader introductions to themselves, Kathy, or if you want us to just fire away.
No, why don't we? So let's hear from each one of them.
Karen, why don't you go first?
Sure. Hello, everyone. I've been on the Capital Planning Committee for a few months now, and I joined because I have a little bit more time in my schedule and wanted to, contribute locally in some way. My experience has been in finance, in the public accounting, initially corporate sector, and I presently work in the nonprofit sector for a small climate action organization. Thank you.
Thank you. Tony?
Hi, everyone. I'm Tony Schoener. I've been on the Capital Planning Committee for, I think, 2 months now. So I'm the new guy. I've been living in Southborough for 30 years. I've worked in the high-tech world and technology and business. in my career. I've always had a strong interest in government, and this felt like the right time to start participating more. So I'm very happy to have found an interesting group to join.
That's
And
great.
as you probably heard from your minute discussion, Tony in his first month has already found his second, I guess you're on 3 committees now, but he found a home as one of our 2 reps as part of the newly formed ARPA committee, and Joe graciously volunteered to step up for that as well.
That's great that you two are doing that. So Tim Martell is doing that from advisory. So we are going to be interested in what you recommend.
I
Okay,
believe the term
Jason.
was burning. I was burning to join the committee.
Well, of course, Joe. Of course. Oh, wait.
Jason, are
Okay.
you going to present? Do you want to be co-host or anything?
I can, or if you want to bring up the documents that I've presented, I'm certainly happy to do it that way too, whatever's easiest for you,
I'll
Andrew.
let you run the deck.
Okay. So before I get into the deck, I figured I'd spend a few minutes on the proposed CIPC bylaw. I think everyone knows the history here. This article was indefinitely postponed because it was so intertwined with the advisory bylaw at the spring town meeting. You all, as advisory, have obviously now passed the main changes you were looking for, with one modification, obviously the linkage to our committee. What we have done is taken the wording in the warrant from last year and provided you with a red line version of what we propose to ask the select board to sponsor at this spring town meeting. And I think obviously articles are always cleaner if we have the right language in the warrant. You know, it doesn't mean they can't be amended on the floor, et cetera, but would certainly welcome your feedback. And I'll summarize what the changes are. I know you all had it in advance, but would welcome your feedback before the warrant goes to print in candidly a vote of support, or if there are dissenting votes, why there are dissent on this, just so we can try to get this, you know, finally done and through in this spring town meeting. But there's really 3 changes that we've made to what was proposed last year in the interest of hearing what many different residents had. There was obviously a variety of opinions, but the easiest change, I think, is to recognize the vote that occurred in November related to the use of the term select board as opposed to board of selectmen. We've changed that throughout the bylaw, assuming that the Attorney General will approve that in short order. The second item was we took out the requirement that a member of the select board and a member of advisory be on capital planning. However, we kept the language that says that you can never have more than one member of any elected board or appointed board, committee, or commission. And what we think that accomplishes is 2 things. The select board at any time could choose to have a representative like they do now. However, it doesn't require that they have a representative. Likewise, it puts it back in advisory's court. If you believe you should have a member or want to have a member on capital planning, which we all know that there was dissent on at the town meeting, it really would allow you to, there would be nothing in the capital bylaw that would preclude that. It would be your own bylaw that would preclude it once we become a standing committee, if that's what the town decides. So we feel like this is looser language because we all know boards and committees turn over, and it would give obviously the appointing authority choice. But I think that's really the main substantive change that we've made. The other item that you'll see down in section 9-32 related to project oversight is we've started to use the word collaborate more in terms of what our role is on capital projects. And you'll hear it a little bit in my presentation of, you know, what we think has happened even in the first year of us having, you know, some collaboration with department heads and boards and committees that are overseeing capital projects. So those are really the 3 main changes, but it's that second one that was really responsive to the feedback from town meeting as opposed to necessarily from our committee. We thought that was just the responsible way to bring this forward. So I'd welcome any questions or comments on that before diving into, I guess, the broader presentation.
So Jason, I think we probably should give a little bit of a big picture as to what's going on with this. So first of all, let's just state that the primary purpose of doing this is to make the Capital Investment Planning Committee a permanent committee instead of a ad hoc, which it is right now. So right now it's a temporary committee. It's 2 years old. And the success of this committee has been so appreciated by certainly the Board of Selectmen that there is a desire to make it a permanent committee. So last year at the town meeting that we had in May, the normal annual town meeting, which was also outside because of COVID, we had Article 32, which was the article that was proposing to change the advisory bylaw for three things. We got the two things changed at the special town meeting. So we got 9 down to 7, and we got officially a vice chair nominated. The third one was the one that caused all the problem at the town meeting, which was we wanted an advisory member to be able to also sit on a permanent committee that dealt with capital planning. So the current bylaw says that each advisory member can sit on one ad hoc committee or a committee appointed by the moderator, which is not many, it's only Personnel Board and Public Works, the Public Works Committee. So we didn't realize we were going to run into the buzzsaw that we did, but we did at town meetings. Everything else at town meeting was flying through fine until we got to Article 32. And a former long-term advisory member got up and just really was very opposed to doing this because he thought we were mixing up the executive function of the town with the legislative function. Advisory is legislative. Capital is formed under the Board of Selectmen, so it's executive. And he was pretty adamant about this. Was Al Hamilton. So it failed, and then therefore 33 had to be pulled because they were interrelated. So advisory at this point has not decided to try to go back and do what we tried to do at last town meeting. And I don't know that there's any desire to do it, Jason, at least for now, just because I think the same thing is going to happen. I don't think we've convinced the people who need convincing that this is what should happen. So for now, I am not aware of any big push to go back and try to allow advisory to sit on this committee.
And I think the discussion we had is we didn't want to preclude it, but really leave it up to you to decide when and if you decide to bring that terminology back.
And I think that's great. So I think that's great. So you've done what you can do. So then it's really kind of in our laps as far as whether we want to pursue this. And so we'll see. But right now, I don't think there's much desire to do it.
Okay.
Jason, did you guys talk at all about either making, I mean, a lot of other towns, it's appointed by the moderator, or at least a couple seats are appointed by the moderator in terms of adding that language?
We did not have any substantive discussion, and it's mainly out of respect for, I'm going to call them the select board. Out of respect, we haven't talked about this with them again, nor have we had the moderator join any of our meetings. I'll speak personally. I'm open to a discussion on it, but we think it should start with the select board weighing in and then deciding from there. But yeah, I do acknowledge that that does exist in other communities.
So Lisa, I think that's just a question on for your board on whether or not you want to entertain something like that, which might, smooth over some of the concerns people had in terms of the capital planning piece. But
Noted. Thank you.
So
Do any of
anyone, as far as questions on the main purpose of this, I mean, I'm sure everybody's fine with getting rid of selectmen and putting select board in there. But the main purpose of this is to make this a standing committee going forward.
It is, but I'd like to leave the option open for advisory and Board of Select input members. We both know, everybody here knows that watched me knows that I have very strong opinions on the fact that having collaborative input from advisory and from the Board of Selectmen in the decisions that we make and the oversight that we do and the plans we put forward makes 100% sense. And I understand concerns, but the current should not outweigh the need for that input on this committee.
Some towns, Joe, do finance committee ex officio, but their charge, there must be somebody appointed from the finance committee.
So Joe, we'll talk about it. We just got 4 new members to advisory, which is a lot. And so we've got a lot to, there's a lot of learning to be done this year as far as the budget goes. So I just didn't think this is the right year to do it. But we'll talk about it again and make sure. I personally think that the advisory member should be on this committee, but town meeting's got to decide, and you saw what happened. Everything went fine until we got to that one, and it wasn't even a close vote. So unless we convince the people who are going to stand up again, I'm not sure it's worth going too much further. But we'll talk about it and see if maybe either that or we want to talk to the select board as far as Andrew's idea would be the better way to do it. If it's
Well, we all know that the annual meetings at certain points are a minority of the population, and we need to get a majority of the population to do the voting.
Good luck on that one, Joe. So.
But before we leave this topic, Kathy, if this does continue in its current form, I would just, ask that we have a liaison from advisory. If we don't have a member, almost treat it like a department, and whether they join our meetings or whether there's a regular offline catch up. I mean, we all know there's some big items coming, and just think, to Joe's point of staying interconnected, we would obviously welcome that. You don't need any sort of formal votes of anyone to do that.
That's a great idea, both of you. So we will certainly do that. There's no reason not to do that. So that will definitely be done. So does anyone else, before Jason gets into the capital plan, the proposed capital plan for fiscal year 23, have any other questions about the proposed CIPC bylaw changes? We're not going to vote on it tonight. We're just listening tonight. We'll take a vote soon, I hope, but tonight's just to ask questions and make sure we understand it. Okay, Jason, so I think we're okay with that one. So
okay. And you can see the screen, correct? All right, so this is the same exact slides that were distributed to all of you last Friday. What I wanted to do is not read off the slides, but just add a little bit of color commentary of what we've done, and then hopefully leave most of the time that we've been allotted for questions. We've already had the opportunity to do introductions, so I'll skip over that. We've tried to show things a little differently. We're starting to get really a good foundation of what has happened in the past and where we're going. So the one thing we're showing new this year that we didn't show last year. I'm sure someone could have done this calculation on their on their own, but the amount that we dedicate towards capital in any given year has varied over the last 5 years alone, between a floor of potentially as low as 6.5% in the forthcoming year to as high as 8.9%. And by capital, we mean not only appropriations in a given year, but also the debt and interest that goes with items that were approved in prior town meetings. So we think we're at a low point now, but I think our job is really to make sure everyone's aware that this probably is your low point. And I think as you advisory continue to discuss the concept of stabilization that I know came up in prior years in particular, I think this slide will probably be an important reference back as you move forward, just given some of the fluctuations. A percent here or there doesn't seem to make a big difference, but it is when you're talking about budgets that are greater than $50 million in all of these years. We've also showed the water fund because I don't know that that's gotten a ton of attention in the past, but as you'll see, there is a big capital item coming out of the water fund this year. And I know there was a lot of surprise about 12 months ago when water rates jumped pretty significantly. It wasn't necessarily due to capital per se, but obviously capital doesn't help, especially when it represents greater than 20% of that particular budget. This next slide is a outlook of what we know about. This basically is assume everything that we're going to talk about tonight gets approved and the existing debt and lease payments that have already been approved by town meeting. You'll see we drop pretty quickly. I'd focus though on the general fund portion on the bottom line because of the way that our school reimbursements work. And you'll see that, going from FY22, which is the year we're in, to FY23, we have a decrease of about $200K. And that includes some leases that we did last year that was new, a new concept that we're paying for things now as opposed to last year. And you'll see it gradually continues to trickle down over the next couple of years. But focusing on the line that's in bold is a little bit deceiving at this point, given some of the reimbursements we still haven't coming through related to the historic school projects about 20 years ago from the state. This is just a listing, just so everyone's aware of what's in the debt for this year that you'll be asked to vote on a budget for, that literally was approved anywhere from 1 year ago to 20 years ago. And just, we think it's really important, and we talked a lot about this last year too, to understand that when we approve items that are debt funded, how long those are going to last and how long it's going to hamper our ability to potentially do other projects. Obviously, the schools are pretty much neutral now. You'll see the main item is the public safety building, but there's a lot of recreation projects that were approved about 5 years ago. A lot of discussion around those for those that were around during that time period. We're still paying for those, but that's what's going to drive some of the fall off that occurs here in the coming year, 1 to 2 years. So we slightly revised our process this year based on just seeing how last year went. I think it's really important to hone in on a few things. First and foremost, we don't bring capital projects forward. We vet projects that were brought to us by department heads, boards, or committees. We reached out in the early summer to solicit updates to the capital plan. We solicited 10 years of input. And then we focused on the next 2 fiscal years of actually getting what I'll call hard data from the department head before they came in to meet with us around a few items. One, like, why are they looking for it? And you have access to all the forms. They're posted on the town website for anyone that's watching at home as well. Not only why they're looking for it, the approximate cost, but actually like a bid, right? And a lot of these projects we're talking about this year aren't formal items that you go out to bid, but they fall on the state bid list, or they fall through, you have to go get 3 bids, you pick the smallest one. So we actually had some hard data to work with. Every one of the department heads we're going to talk about tonight joined us in a public meeting. Every capital member had a chance to ask questions before we voted. And what I'll say is, between us talking to a lot of the department heads and us ultimately voting, almost every department pulled back on at least one thing. I'll have a summary of what those were in a second, but we really think our process is working. We would welcome any feedback from you or members of the community as we think through it, but we're trying to allow the department heads to bring the right proposals, see how it fits into the bigger picture, and then a lot of them are making decisions before we're forced to make some of the tough ones this year on what to advance and what not to advance. We also vetted every capital item, regardless of the funding source. So we've tried to summarize where we think the funding sources are going to come from, but any of you that have been on advisory for a while know that that can kind of shift as we go towards town meeting, other sources become available, grants become available, etc. We think it's really important, and Mark and Brian have been phenomenal in this respect of it reinforcing with the department heads that they have to bring everything forward to us. If it's great, if it hits the capital policy of 10,000 or more. And obviously we as a broader group, not just capital, but the town finance team, and obviously you as advisory should think about what the right funding sources are. But we want to see the whole population. What are they going for grants on, et cetera, to make sure we're not necessarily applying for grants to things that aren't on the capital plan. We're focusing on things that really are critical to their operations, as their departments either evolve or need replacements or repair, et cetera. This is a very brief summary of items that were removed by the department heads. They weren't removed by capital, but these were items that were removed, what I'll call in the later stages of our capital planning process. The DPW garage doors are not any sort of imminent safety danger or need of repair. John Parent had been planning to do more of a phased repair. We kind of want to see what happens with the economic picture and think about that no earlier than if there was a fall town meeting next year, but potentially well beyond that. Again, no safety issues, no immediate repair, and we don't think there's going to be much incremental energy efficiency as well, based on what we've been told. Mark removed the townhouse office furniture replacement, mainly because of all the ongoing discussions of, is the townhouse going to be the home for every department in the future? Or are we going to have a school that we may have the ability to use to house town departments? So it just seemed premature. The fire UTV, which is similar, but not the same as like an all-terrain vehicle to access hard to reach spots, both for fire or medical situations. The chief pulled back on that one because he had higher priority capital needs that we are recommending to advance. But we are coordinating with him in trails in particular to see if there are grant opportunities through their avenues that are not available to public safety sector. This is just item that public safety grant processes never allocate funds to. It's a key exception, seen as a low priority item. But the chief did submit a pretty compelling item related to that. And then at MIS, Jay is in the infancy stages of exploring a revamp to the Wi-Fi for town buildings. He just is not ready to bring it forward and hasn't had a chance to properly vet it with MTC. So he's put a pause on that one for now. We think all of these things are going to happen at some point. It's just a matter of when at this point. But again, no safety issues, nothing really being, I'll call it, kicked down the road. These items just really aren't ready for prime time based on what we know.
Jason, do you feel really confident that the Wi-Fi issue is not safety related?
Yeah, because based on what we were told by Jay, I think in the premise of all of this, Tim, and I think it's a really good question. We also know that, three of you sitting here tonight between advisory and capital are going to be on the ARPA, committee. And some of these items may be able to be funded, whether it be through ARPA or other grant funding, but Jay is really still exploring that with MTC. We're going to keep keep close to it. I certainly will pass that comment back to him.
Yeah, it seems odd to me because it's a well-known vulnerability. And at the same time, it's not that expensive to remediate. So it's an odd one to pull out.
Yeah, I think it probably was the last item that came to us, and Jay wasn't even really ready to come to a capital planning meeting to discuss it.
Okay.
So that's part of it, to be completely honest. It's just not. But I would encourage you, Tim, to take that concern right back to Jay. Because capital's in a tough spot in that one. If you don't have something to vet, you can't vet it.
Okay. Thanks.
Tim is the advisory liaison to IT, Jason, so he can certainly.
Perfect. So I know this next slide is busy, and I'm not going to read it to you, but I'm just going to highlight a few items for you, just so you're aware of what could change between now and town meeting. And then we'll get to like what's not on here that may appear that may need some more conversation. So I think everyone's pretty familiar with the Northborough Road culvert. This has been around for a long time. We obviously were successful. I believe Selectman Dennington worked with Senator Eldridge to secure 70,000 of call an earmark, I think that's what it is, in the state ARPA bill to fund this. The problem is construction costs have gone up a ton since not only that figure was provided to Senator Eldridge, but Karen has now pivoted from her crews doing the work to an outside vendor doing the work. So you'll see that there is funding that we are slotted to appropriate from the general fund for this, despite the state earmark. So we've got the 70, we'll have that. But what Mark and Karen have committed to is they're going to get a formal bid on this prior to town meeting. Fingers crossed, it comes in lower than the probable bid we've received to date from the town's engineering firm.
So did Andrew think that the 70 was going to cover it?
Yeah, I mean, a year ago at this time, this had a placeholder of 40K in the capital plan. So part of it's, I think, what we're dealing with in the world overall. Part of it is the shift from Karen's crew doing it to a third party doing it. So the labor really wasn't factored into a lot of the estimates. We heard 4 estimates on this project in our capital planning meetings before we got this 108, which there's hard data behind at this point.
Jason, I'm sorry for asking. Is this the issue with the road that has the iron plate that's covered over? Or is this separate?
Yeah, Northborough Road, which is just beyond Chestnut Hills, you head west towards head towards Westboro. But yeah, the road's closed right now because there's no houses, anything on there. But it's closed until they can fix it. The other 2 questions, the other 2 items on DPW.
I'm sorry, Jason. I know I'm being a pain on this. Did you say there are no houses on that road?
On that stretch of the road, someone correct me if I'm wrong, but it's currently closed. Like, you can't drive down it.
I'm kind of curious if the selectmen have discussed whether or not that road's actually needed. If there are no houses on it and it's currently closed and nobody seems to care.
Lisa, I'll defer that one to you.
So there was some discussion, Tim, as far as whether to replace the culvert or what we need to do. There's actually, I believe there's one house, Jason, in between the stretch of Northborough Road and near the Chestnut Hill Farm. There's one house in between there. So, and there is access to that house. It's only halfway down to where the culvert is. You know, Tim, Karen came to us with a bunch of different information that the reasons for keeping this open. I mean, I'm happy to supply you with those. I can get them for you. It's probably easier to do it that way. It was part of a presentation she did. I'm happy to get that and to supply that to you.
Sure.
She felt that this was the best path to go. So I will make sure that you get that before the end of the weekend.
All right, thank you. Thank you both.
So within DPW, there's also 2 trucks that are slated for replacement this year. One is a utility dump, one is an excavator. The excavator does have a partial funding recommendation out of the water fund based on the proportion of use that it gets used for water versus general DPW asks. There are formal forms in the submission that we gave you. And then the big item for DPW is the Newton Street water main construction. At last year's town meeting, we funded a feasibility related to this, knowing that this was forthcoming. The current estimate is approximately 2.5. Capital has voted on the concept that this needs to be done. We have not voted on the 2.5. None of this, though, will be funded in FY23. All we would be looking to do is get the authorization. It would lead to a bond. But I think what you're going to hear when Brian comes and presents some of his articles related to debt in rescinding certain debt authorizations is there's a significant amount of debt that the town took on and actually they raised the debt in the water fund related to Route 9 many years ago that never was spent due to savings on the project. So there are going to be a few motions, is what we understand, a few articles to reallocate some of that funding to this project because it's actually cash we already have on hand through the same source. There's a whole legal background to how that's going to be accomplished that I will defer to Mark, Brian, and the town council on. But what I think we want to do is make you aware of this. We think it's needed. Capital thought it was needed last year when we pushed for the feasibility study. The number is just a large number that needs to be refined, as obviously everyone understands the outcome of what's happening in the construction industry, which I can't imagine is going to be a lot better given all the funding that is going towards water infrastructure more broadly through some of the state and federal funding that's coming through from ARPA.
Jason, just to be clear, are you saying that we've already got the money borrowed for the Route 9 stuff? So we've got it borrowed, we just never spent it. And that
Yeah, it's approximately 800,000. Yep.
So what's going to be asked of town meeting is to take that 800 and move it over to this project?
And then fund the residual of whatever else we think we need to get it done.
So I'm still confused about what we're trying to do at annual town meeting, since you don't have this slotted any place as far as another column. Are they going to try, is the desire to get this project approved and the bond
Yes.
approved at town meeting?
Yes, but we don't think it has an impact. The reason it's blank to the right is we don't think it impacts any budget in FY23. You're not going to see it hit until 24, 25, once the residual gets bonded.
Okay, that makes sense.
I'm going to speed through facilities because I think it's pretty clear cut, but obviously welcome your feedback. Corderville, we had a lot of discussion on the two items here, fire alarm and siding. These are items that, in John Parent's opinion, just have to be done to allow us to continue to use the building in the short term for what it's used for, senior center and multiple building departments. So we did recommend these move forward with the full transparency that we know that the fate of Corderville largely hinges upon the outcome of the school discussions. But these are items that cannot wait 3, 4, 5 years if we're going to continue to inhabit the building, which I think is pretty clear what will happen during those next couple of years. The townhouse, this is phase 2 of the restroom renovation for the newer members of advisory. We actually split this last year. We had an 80,000 placeholder for most of the year as capital. And then as the budget got tight, we decided to phase this project over 2 years. The men's room is in the process of being done. The ladies' room is what would be slated for next year. My understanding from John Parent that this is still a good number and they went with the right number for last year. You're just not going to see the savings we saw with the bathroom when we put that at Corderville 2 years ago. The other item is the DPW office needs new floor coverings. This has been deferred 3 to 4 years at this point, and just really they need to be replaced. And then we have started to look at the facilities maintenance fund. The good news here,
I'm sorry, what do you mean by new office floor coverings?
like carpet or tile, depending upon the existing.
Got it.
What's
Thank you.
You're welcome. And then facilities maintenance, this 100,000 has been the number that the town has gone with for many years. This just allows John to deal with items that he has no idea are coming, repairs along the way. It does require approval of Mark during the year. We think the 100 continues to be the right number. Just for your benefit, there's approximately 30,000 that has carried over from prior years into this year. So we don't think that there's any reason to increase it at this point in time. I know that has come up in discussion previously. We closely monitor it and we've asked John to track, how it's being used and just give us some visibility to it, just because we know that there will be a time this number needs to go up at a certain point in time.
I think that's a great idea. I was going to ask you what we spent $70,000 on for ad hoc repairs.
A lot of it is painting.
A lot of paint.
Well, a lot recently of paint, but things break, like a furnace breaks or an HVAC system goes down, you need a repair person to come out. As soon as we get the files, I know John has been working on it. We are happy to share with advisory, just so you have historical color, because candidly, that was my question, Tim, as well. What are we spending this on? It's obviously a decent chunk of change every year, but obviously the town needs to continue to operate without having a town meeting or reserve fund transfer for everything that could possibly go wrong in the many buildings that we operate.
There are many that over time thought that this number should be much larger, but 100 seems to have worked. And our buildings are old. There's always things that go wrong during the year that cannot be anticipated. We know something's going to go wrong. We just don't know.
Yeah, so I guess my question is it just supplies that we're talking about, or are we talking about third-party labor?
Give me both,
Okay,
depending on the needs.
okay.
What I will tell you, this is a personal opinion. John is incredibly thrifty with how he spends this money, which is, I think, why you see that it's carrying over year to year as opposed to being spent down to zero. In the talent that he has in his current staff, they're doing a lot more in-house with labor, especially on the construction side, than they ever used to be able to do due to the talents of those individuals. So I think that's another factor here to be taken into account. They're obviously not electricians or plumbers, et cetera. So they do need to contract for those sorts of items.
When John Parent comes in from advisory to discuss his budget, he'll go over this with us too. So we'll see where it stands and what it was used for.
I'll go to fire next. This is candidly a light year for fire. I think you all know that fire historically does have some large capital items. However, I think we've taken care of a lot of the bigger ones in the last couple of years in terms of the vehicles. This year, they have a vehicle replacement of a pickup truck. Just for everyone's benefit, this is a truck that was out of service 3 years ago when Chief Achilles started with us. And he basically has rehabbed it and I'll call it limped it along to extend the useful life at a small dollar until we could appropriately slot it into the capital plan. So that is what you're looking at there. I will tell you, I've had conversations with John Parent about if there are ways to minimize this expense, similar to what we're doing on the police side related to electric/hybrid vehicles. There are plenty of trucks out there. That discussion's really in the infancy stages because that's just not something we've looked at in the past, but we are carrying what the chief has recommended for now. They also have portable radios that are slotted mainly for our emergency management in EOC. This number was larger when we started the capital plan, but the chief actually did have an earmark from Representative Dykema this year, specifically related to radios, so was able to take care of some stuff earlier than anticipated, which knocked this number down to what remains. There are rescue tools. This is currently in an open grant cycle with FEMA. We may or may not hear before town meeting. However, these are beyond their useful life, and the chief got to the later stages of the grant cycle last year. So with additional funding available from the federal government through CARES this year, we're cautiously optimistic this one will hopefully disappear from needing to be appropriated in its final form. The fire PPE is the regular replacement of gear that's extended beyond its useful life. The reason you see it split, we did have 40,000 last year. 20 was funded by St. Mark's, 20 was funded by Fay. St. Mark's made that commitment for 3 years, which is why you'll see a pilot/gift over to the right. So we are confident we're going to have 20K from St. Mark's to fund this. We have not gotten that same commitment from Fay for this year, but the gear is needed. Again, an item that could only go down, not up, based on what we know today. And then vehicle Knox box control units, which are to secure keys to buildings in the fire truck and apparatus to make sure that the right users are getting access to the buildings. Any questions on fire? For police, we have 1 cruiser this year. The chief has committed to electric/hybrid. It'll be very similar format to last year with what he started to do. So not only will we see savings from fuel, which will hit some of the operating budgets that you all see, but we also think it will help minimize the 60K cost that you see here too. Very happy to see the chief collaborating with John in particular on our Green Communities grant. And we actually think we've uncovered another grant cycle that's additive for any vehicles that are purchased by the town, regardless of purpose. So we're hoping that this will continue to minimize some of these costs and I'll call it knock out the impact that we've seen of inflation on the vehicle supply chain. Again, one cruiser. Last year we did two. And finally in police, this is a new item. No one has looked at this on
Can
capital
we stay
before
on
this year.
cruises for a moment, Jason?
Sure.
This is the new advisory. So advisory members, every year, it's either going to be one or two. This is a 1 year, last year was two. So this is very normal as far as the police cruisers.
Yeah, and
How
for
many-
your,
This is Marcy.
Oh, go ahead, Marcy.
I just have a question. Is the standard issue dollar amount for a vehicle plate, that was like a placeholder is 60,000? Or I wonder where we come up with that number.
the support is in the packet we have online. But
Okay.
it's beyond just, this is not just a vehicle, it's all the outfitting. And I do see the
Okay.
chiefs in the audience if you want to go deeper into this, but it's all the outfitting for a police cruiser, which is naturally a lot based on what it does. And the light packages are not cheap as well.
I guess I was just asking the question since the pickup truck is also slated at 60,000. I had less of a question about the cruiser, but
Yeah,
I just didn't know if that's the standard placeholder for any vehicle that's
it is not.
Okay.
It just happens to be what the two chiefs independently are carrying based on two different buildups. And Marcy, just for your benefit, I think it was like 55 last year. So anyone that's followed the vehicle industry, the auto industry, it's something we're watching.
Thank
Jason,
you,
what's the,
Jason.
what's the total cost on that Taser body camera program?
So what we are carrying right now, so Capital has only voted to support continued exploration of this, and we're carrying the maximum cost right now. But the total cost over a 10-year time period would be $626,000 based on the quote. This is both body cameras and tasers. The police currently do carry tasers. They do not carry or wear body cameras. We are in a collective bargaining year, so I do want to be cognizant of that. So what Capital has done, knowing that the chief continues to do his homework on this program in determining the right timing, is we thought it was appropriate to carry year one of that cost in this lease program for now. We would not be surprised if you end up in a situation where the Taser program and the body camera program get separated for a number of reasons, but they are tied together from a vendor perspective and how the whole system works. So we've told the chief we are supportive of his continued exploration. We know it's a collective bargaining issue, but we also know that the pricing and the strategy has changed. And we're also very focused on other communities have gotten certain funding, whether it be through state earmarks or grants for this. So we need to find the right balance with that as well. No one is getting these things fully funded based on our research to date.
How many are we talking about here?
Yeah, why is it, what is $600,000 worth of this stuff? Why is it so expensive?
A 10-year program. If the chief wants to come in and explain it more, given that I think he's next, I'll certainly defer to him. Otherwise, I'll keep going with what Capital was provided. But 626 is a 10-year
Jason, since we are about to talk to Chief Hollis, why don't we just hold that one till he gets on and we can go further with him on that one?
That's fine. The one thing I will also caution you on, and this is mainly, I think Andrew's the liaison. Last year, I was the liaison on advisory for police. The cost of the tasers has flipped between the capital budget and the operating budget every year. We're carrying it in capital. I think it's also in operating.
Yeah.
We just need to make sure we don't carry it twice.
Yeah, Jason, that was going to be one of my comments. I think it probably should be in operating. I think it's good that Capital vetted it. It's just from a funding perspective. I don't think of this as a traditional like capital lease or capital asset. We don't own it. It's really an operating cost. So I would probably move it back into there. And just for background, in my conversations with Chief, my recommendation was to split it, as you were talking about, wait till after the collective bargaining was done, at least apply for 1 year's worth of grants, because there's state and federal grants for this. The tasers in the meantime need to be upgraded, so we can do that isolated and talk about the cameras and the body cams later, but we could talk more with Chief when he came in, but that was my preliminary kind of finding.
But we've been buying tasers for several years.
We're
Correct.
just at the end of it. We're at the end of the lease and the useful life of the current tasers.
Okay, so we're gonna buy a whole new set of tasers, is what you're saying.
Yeah, so this is tasers plus body cams plus cruiser cams. So it's a package. So my conversation was basically the tasers need to be upgraded. Let's look at the tasers isolated. We can't do the body cams yet because the union has to agree to them. And I would like to apply for a grant, try to apply for a grant first before we, try to have the taxpayers pay for that.
All right, so Jason, you've done your job as far as this being on here, so let's keep going and then we'll.
Yeah, again, it's only going to go lower. Can't go higher based on how we're carrying it. I'm not going to spend much time with recreation in schools other than just to provide you visibility. Recreation is planning to come to us for a van. They would require capital approval based on the policy. They're planning to fund it through their rec revolving fund. I know all of you are focused on revolving funds in general, so this is more of an FYI. Capital has not been presented with any data on this and or taken a position. Likewise, my understanding is they're planning to go to the CPC for a Mooney tennis and pickleball courts. We have not seen the application. We've not vetted it. We've put it as a CPA placeholder, but we do not envision it coming back as a potential general fund expense, which I know obviously is what drives the rate. And then on the schools, they have their own revolving fund as well, as you all know, primarily funded by extended day, but there are other sources there. They plan to take care of at least the Finn parking lot this year with that funding, but also have trotters slated. The superintendent is planning to come shortly to present that to capital. But again, we have not vetted that, but it is slotted in the next fiscal year, so we're presenting it for visibility.
Jason, on the Mooney one, if I remember, didn't we in capital talk about like a $20-something thousand overage that they were paying out of the revolving fund? Is that on top of this or is that different?
This is basically to that was for the lights, Andrew, and that was at
Okay.
Richardson, which is at Neary.
Gotcha.
There's more to that story to come, I think, in the future when we get to oversight. But yeah, this is basically, they've been very focused on pickleball and converting the courts. Mooney is at Finn for everyone's benefit.
Okay. Jason, one other thing on the schools. Did we have anything from Algonquin? Because I remember they had some giant athletic complex slated for this year. Did that fall off, hopefully?
It's no earlier than next year. So it will be no earlier than FY24. The superintendent is planning to make a presentation in the next 6 months to start to gather community feedback. So it's a year and a half out.
But they didn't have any capital for this year?
Good question. I think it's on my next slide. The only third bullet down to the bottom is Greg did inform us last week. They may be looking to do something related to a redundant hot water heater at Algonquin. The Southborough share was less than 100,000 is what I understand, but we have not vetted it or been presented with it, but he is potentially coming forward with that, but it's got to go through obviously the regional school committee first.
Yeah. One other thing, Jason, in the ARPA fund, I believe there's also 100,000 earmarked for HVAC, which I didn't see anything on the capital plan, but I wasn't sure if John's kind of thought of that or if we have that somewhere in the schedule.
No one can explain to me how that ended up in the state. I've asked Mark in particular many times. I have no idea how that was chosen as the priority for Southborough.
I think they did it for every town got an allocation for HVAC.
So I'll tell you, not in FY23, but in FY24, there are 2 HVAC programs currently on the capital plan. One is for the townhouse. So they need the exterior work done first. So there is an HVAC program there. In addition, Trottier has a small HVAC project in the grand scheme of things in that same year. So I'm very confident it'll go to good use. I was just surprised at what they chose. I get it. And I think there's even more funding coming related to those topics related to air circulation.
Perfect.
Okay, so just to be clear for the others that are on the Zoom that aren't following what Andrew and Jason are talking about, are we saying that the state's 5 billion ARPA money they have earmarked for every town, $100,000 for HVAC work?
It's different by town, but I believe that they allocated, I don't know, like $195 million for HVAC upgrades. And I think each town was given a cut. Southborough's is 100.
Yeah, so it's specifically in the text of the language that was signed by the governor.
Okay, but it doesn't have to be used in fiscal year 23.
No, I don't
No,
believe
next
so.
couple of years, I think, is the key.
Okay,
Okay, so I know I need to wrap up because I know you have a busy night ahead. We've talked about Newton Street. I think the one thing that you really all need to be aware of is this is the first year, as of now, we are not as capital carrying a line item for roads or sidewalks. However, if you try to tie the numbers we presented you tonight to what Brian Ballantyne presented to the Board of Selectmen a couple weeks ago, there is a delta between the capital general fund. It all relates to roads. Here's where we're at on roads. We haven't been presented with a plan. We've just been presented with a number. And we think we need more data to actually recommend something. We also heard in multiple meetings from Karen that she needs the next year to actually execute on projects that are already waiting and already have the funding. So we do have an execution risk, we believe, as well. So we would welcome your feedback on this topic, but right now, capital's not voted on anything related to funding for roads, not because we don't think there's worthy road projects in town. We don't have a clear picture on how the money is going to be spent. And I think if we listen to some of the dialogue that's happened recently in town, we think it's our responsibility to present a better plan, not necessarily precisely this street in this year, because we get that that's a moving target, but a broader plan of how this money is being used and matched with the Chapter 90 and other grant funds that come our way from time to time. So.
okay, so Brian used 400K in his presentation. Everybody agrees with that?
Yes.
Okay, and so you're saying that it's definitely not written in stone. It's just a placeholder, more or less, for the moment?
Yes.
So
Go ahead.
to all the new advisory members, this is a number that we have had a tough time getting our arms around over the years. There's been times when we thought we had a pretty good spreadsheet that would compute what's needed. And when we say road work, we're talking about just the normal maintenance to repair roads, to repave roads, etc. However, the reason we've got to look at this closer, as does capital, is because last year there was a proposal to, I'm just going to say, build a park. And that proposal required using a whole lot of town money as far as the initial proposal, $1 million of it. And when you started looking at all the different uses of the money that's being set aside for roads, there wasn't any money left to just do normal road maintenance. So the money that goes into this road fund gets carried over from year to year. It doesn't go away after the years get closed out. It's in a warrant article, so it stays, which it needs to because of the way she does contracts. But we've really got to roll up our sleeves again and look at this because when I looked at it last year, you just couldn't understand where there was any money left to just do normal road maintenance, which is important. So I'm not going to say any more about that. We've got our DPW meeting coming up, and we've got our liaison. But we really do have to understand more about where the roads are going and if there's enough money to do what should be done.
How does that play, Kathy, with the Chapter 90?
Say that again?
How does it play with the money we get from the state for roads?
Well, it's all in there. So, you basically have to know what that number is too. So you throw it all in one big, pot, and then look at, what the contracts are that are being signed, which are multi-year contracts, to see where there's enough. So it all goes in the same pot as far as what gets spent. But it was just really hard to understand where money was going to come from just to do normal stuff with what we saw 7-8 months ago. So I don't want to say more about that, Jason. I just want to make sure that you
Okay.
understand.
I think we're all on the
got
same
more to do on that.
page. If we vet anything, I will obviously let all of you know and have to have further conversation, but I think you all have the history of this item. The other item that you'll see that we're gonna have a separate meeting on once it's formulated is there will be a placeholder related to Neary School feasibility, mainly because we don't know what the state MSBA may or may not say before town meeting. That's going to be a whole separate meeting, a lot of stakeholders once we're ready. But right now, given that the warrant closes in 2 weeks, I do know the superintendent has let Mark know to put a placeholder in case it is needed. I think there's still debate out there whether that's an annual town meeting item or a special town meeting item. With any of this, it's not going to impact the FY23 budget. It's the budget for the next 30 years after that. That would be the concern with voting yes or no on that article. So as you start to think about tax rates and how this plays in with other things, it's just something to be aware of. We also expect a article from the superintendent and the regional school committee related to a capital stabilization fund specifically for the regional schools. We have not heard a presentation on that, but my understanding is there's a placeholder that we will certainly weigh in on. For everyone's benefit, Northborough voted on this many years ago. I think it's 3 to 4 years ago, and has already adopted it, but it doesn't mean anything until Southborough adopts it. Southborough defeated it. So we're going to need to get a little historical background. I candidly do not have it, but I know Greg has some strong thoughts of where that maybe went sideways in the past, in Southborough at least. The other item that I haven't touched on is, I think we're all aware of the large ADA report that came to the town. There's a lot of work that needs to be done, both in facilities, in recreation. I know Brian has some placeholders. We haven't been privy to a presentation on what money would be used for there, but I think that may be one other delta between what we're currently carrying in our capital plan versus what's in the placeholder budgets that Brian has already presented to all of you.
He's got 40,000 in that, I believe. Is that correct?
Yeah. So we haven't vetted that. I do know Bonnie Faniff in particular has reached out to me a few times to ask what's capital's role, and I think we are happy to help in any way, but we need to see something come from I'll call it I forget the exact name, but the new ADA committee or the town administrator or some other group that's looking to advance this, whether it be facilities or someone else. All right, last slide. Froze on me. Sorry, I lied. 2 more slides, but I'll be quick. The good news is you already heard, the debt's falling off of the next couple of years. The goal is not to quickly refill it, but we all know that it's nice to at least be headed that direction for some of the things we're talking about in broader sense as a community. The public safety building will be the main driver of any existing debt, at least in the general fund, until the town appropriates a new capital project. We've talked about Neary a little bit. We've talked about a community center. The seniors are very set still on bringing Corderville as early as next fall to town meeting. We are obviously working on a much broader plan related to the community center and the school project to try to link them. The library still has significant needs that we're trying to solve through our current space needs analysis. But depending upon how that all falls out, they may have future needs. And then we have a lot of items in the capital plan related to Corderville and South Union. We have to carry those as long as we own the buildings, but those are candidly buildings that have been the topic, in particular South Union, of, what is their future use to the town. So our capital plan could look very different, for the next 5 years, depending on what we do with the schools, what we do with the community center, and what we do with some of our existing buildings in terms of repairs or disposal. Final item I just want to make you aware of, and I do think we should talk about it, but it may not be until after town meeting unless there's an article specific to town meeting, is, we spent a lot of time collaborating on capital approval. So it's great that it gets approved. It's great that people agree at town meeting, but just because we approve it doesn't mean we need to spend all the money. And if there are more prudent ways to spend it, even after appropriate it, it's always pretty easy to turn it back. And no one ever argues with the turn back. We're still formulating some observations, but it's been, from a personal perspective, very intriguing to watch some of the decisions that are made. And I think we should make a report to you, especially in your capacity as advisory, just so you understand, where things are working and where we all need to focus as a town to generate those turnbacks to the extent that they're available. The good news is, though, early on in the year, we reviewed, as per the capital policy, everything that was out there from prior appropriations. And there's $80K coming back in this year. I know it's not a huge driver of the budget, but there's $80K that's going to be returned for projects that were under budget. Those are just appropriations. There's also a ton, and this is material, no matter how you define material, of historic bonds that either were raised and actually we got the money, or authorizations like the public safety building that can come back to the town. So I think you'll see a bunch of articles related to that. I'll let Brian and Carla speak to all of that, but we've been very focused on that as capital as well. We need to focus on CPC next. They have projects that have been out there 10 to 15 years that they're still carrying money for, that has not been turned back to the town. Thinking back to the townhouse conversation in particular last year of whether we could afford that and whether that would impact us, there's a lot of money there, but they control some of that. As recent as a couple of months ago, there was a project in front of them to basically redo a project that had been appropriated in 2015. It's just an example using old money to basically redo it for a second time. We just think that process needs to be tightened up. I know CPC is focused on it and starting to look at it, but it was certainly eye-opening when we looked at it as a committee as a whole a couple months ago. So that's all I got. Welcome any other questions. Thanks for bearing with me and for the questions all along the way.
Well, I don't want to leave this slide yet. This is really important. Okay, so Jason, it's true that the capital policy that was formulated a year or so ago and approved, right, basically authorizes capital to do what you described in the slide, except for maybe CPC, which we'll talk about separately. Is that correct?
We look at it. We have no formal authority over it, but we discussed it in multiple public meetings.
Okay, so you're saying that you're doing it, and you really think you've cleaned it up on the town side as far as looking at past appropriations for capital to see what is done and therefore what should be closed out?
Yeah, and I give a lot of credit, in particular Carla, but Mark and Brian too. They really pushed some of the department heads. They wanted to try to keep going with some things, and they opened some old warrants and said, this is what it was for. If you have something new that you want to use it for, you got to go back to town meeting. So in particular, Carla, she's really towing a very hard line there. And I think it's refreshing.
I've always been surprised about this piece of it. I've always been surprised that the town auditor, the outside auditor, doesn't require this as part of what he does. It doesn't include this in his management report as far as it needs to be done. Because we've seen cases where old warrant article money that was intended for one purpose was used for another purpose. It may have been sort of related, but not necessarily. So I think this is very refreshing and healthy. Now, as far as CPC, you're saying you're going to roll up your sleeves and try to help them maybe clean up their books a little bit too?
Yeah.
Okay. I think that's great.
That's a tougher one because They
agree.
obviously,
They could say no. So, you know.
Yep.
Okay, but I would hope that they wouldn't, because it would be helpful to get that clean up too, to see what really they've got left to do other things with. All right, so I think this is excellent. So anyone have any questions? Can you go back to the slide, Jason, that just shows the, sorry, well,
yeah,
okay, so
again,
the 700,000 that's in the general fund, right? That's been voted on by capital?
yes. Do you mean to open the slide or no?
No, I'm fine, just, I just want.
The only thing that could change there is the body camera. That could go down. That's the only number we didn't vote on. And the only potential addition is the road discussion.
Okay, all right. Okay, so advisory, I'm going to go from left to right. Andrew, any further questions or any questions?
Nope.
Marcy?
No questions at this point. I appreciate the information, because when folks do come present to us, I think I'll have a better idea of where we're headed and have some specific questions for them, but not for you guys. Thank you, Jason and everyone.
And that's a good point. When we meet with the department head whose capital project is on here, we always talk about that too. So you'll have another chance to really vet it out, flush it out. But getting this done early, like they've done, is so helpful as far as trying to bring this all together. It really does make things so much more efficient to have this number now instead of 2 months from now. Okay, who's next? Let's see, Adam?
Yeah, I agree, Jason. This was really helpful. And the only question I was wondering, is there a target number that we like to shoot for as far as the general fund each year? And where are we as far as kind of percent to spend on that?
I think that's really that first slide. We do not operate with a target. We operated with the projects that were presented to us. But obviously realize that, we're operating a little bit in a silo to start, but we feel it's important. And last year in particular, we accelerated projects because we thought it was the right time to do them. And, have to find ways to work with, obviously, you, the town finance team, to fit things in if they are critical needs. So there's no target unless we go to stabilization topic at another point in time.
So I don't think stabilization is in the bailiwick of capital. I think it's in the bailiwick of select board, advisory, and town finance committee. So that's kind of the thing we've got to talk about. And as you saw on one of the slides, is the regional school committee is proposing that they do the exact same thing at their level that we've been talking about. So again, stabilization, whether you talk about free cash, capital, anything else that bounces up and down a lot or could bounce. So we're going to talk about this as far as whether we think it's the right thing to do. Right now, as you saw from the meeting last week with Board of Selectmen, Brian has proposed taking $300,000 out of free cash and basically trying to start stabilizing free cash. But to me, it's all stabilization, regardless of the specific item, and whether we want to do or not is the question on the table. So we will spend some time talking about that before town meeting. Okay, so that's Adam. Tim?
I have no more questions.
Tom?
No questions. Thanks for your time.
I think I got everybody, right? Where's Mark? Yeah, Marcy's up there. Okay, so thank you guys. It's nice to see you again. My old buds from Capitol. And Karen, I haven't seen you in a long, long time, so nice to see you.
Can I make a motion to adjourn? There's a second from Capital
Second.
Planning.
Second.
Second by Lisa. Roll call vote. Braccio,
Aye.
Hark,
Aye.
Palmer.
Aye.
I almost called in you, Andrew. I had my old order. And Schoener,
Aye.
Wheeler. I didn't hear you, Karen. Give me a thumbs up.
Aye.
All right, thank you. And Malinowski's aye. And then Kathy, for sake of completeness, I'll motion that we adjourn the Capital Planning School Research Subcommittee. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, roll call vote. Cook
Aye.
and Malinowski's aye. Thank you, everyone, for having us.
Good night, guys. Thank you very much. Good job. Good work. Seriously.
Thank Thank you.
All right, so Chief Paulus is next. Andrew. There he is. Hey, Chief, so you're muted.
How's that?
There you go.
How's
Go ahead.
everybody doing tonight?
We're doing fine. We just had a good, I don't know how much of that you heard, but we had a good presentation from Capitol, so we're doing good. We're getting things done. So
Wanna
does
say-
everybody know Chief Paulus? I know Andrew does, and I'm sure Tim does. Do the other guys? Have you guys ever met Chief?
No,
How long have you been here, Chief Paulus? 3 years now? 4 years?
It's coming up on 8 years in about a month.
Unbelievable. Oh, time flies. So never mind. Okay. All right. So Andrew Pfaff is the liaison to police. So I'm going to turn this over to him to kind of introduce
Sure.
the budget and then we'll get into the details.
Let me put on the, hold on a second. Put your budget up. Let me know if you could see that. Kathy, you can see that, right?
Yep,
Yes.
we can see it.
Okay. So a couple things of note, and I can let the chief go through it, but just kind of the highlights. The salary and wages only include the increases in steps and the increases in SAP and the chief's contract. Does not include any increase in any of the union officers because there's no collective bargaining agreement right now. So more than likely this number will be increased. So just kind of keep that in mind. This does include an additional dispatcher, communications officer. There is a corresponding reduction in part-time resources and overtime. I think the incremental cost is what, about 30,000 there, Chief?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Most of the other line items are pretty haven't changed a whole lot except for because of the new dispatcher.
Hey, Andrew, question.
Sure.
On some of those that you were just going through, where it says contractual, is that in reference to the collective bargaining agreement, or is that a different? Is that something else?
There is, I believe, a separate collective bargaining agreement just for the communications officers. Is that right, Chief?
Yes, they're both up July 1st.
So it's the dollars are based upon the steps, which are in the union contract. Right now, the dollars for the steps are the FY22 levels. So that's why I was saying, there most likely will be a corresponding increase for FY23. Over the past 3 years, it has been a 2% increase, but obviously they're in a negotiation year, so we don't know yet what that number will be. If we do use that kind of 2% increase as some kind of proxy, it changes this overall salaries number to about 3%, right? For the other pieces. But again, we don't know what that final number will be.
And we're going to get more into what Andrew just said, because I'm having trouble following exactly what we should do to try to really understand where the budget might end up once the collective bargaining agreement is renewed and signed. When does that happen, Chief? I know it's going to happen after March, but when do you think it's all going to be finalized, the two agreements?
We're supposed to meet probably starting the end of next week, and depends how many bargaining sessions it would take to come to an agreement. Fingers crossed that they can get that done before town meeting, but there's always a chance that they could not come to an agreement and it would run its course for I don't know how long.
All right, so keep going, Andrew.
Yeah.
So sorry, one other question. So if it is related to the collective bargaining agreement, we don't have any real degrees of freedom there on even, taking a look at why something's increased or changed. It is what it is.
Yeah,
That's
correct. I mean, I think what we can do, Adam, in our capacity is try to influence or speak to the selectmen who would sign that, in a tough budget year, we need to, be tough, right? So things like that. But yeah, again, it's the selectmen would set that, just like they would with an SAP increased dollar amounts done by the personnel board. It's kind of outside of our control. It just is what it is. But I think Kathy's referring to, like, if we don't have it in the budget, how do we kind of make sure we're not, we put enough in the budget to cover for it.
Mhm.
What else was in here? And then the other one,
The Taser, because I still am confused. There's,
correct. So the other one I wanted to cover off was the tasers. Where did I put them?
there it is.
Yeah, so this taser rental fee, and I believe the big chunk of the tasers is 1 year left, and the other, so it's like 10,000 a year. It's broken up into one $8,000 contract and a $2,000 contract. The 8,000 I think expires next year. And Chief, I'll let you speak to this, but they're basically, on their last legs, right? So they need to be upgraded. The chief's been working with a company on tasers, body cams, and new cruiser cameras, like all in a package with software, et cetera. I do believe that it should, if, even though capital supports it, I think it should sit in the operating budget, just like this taser here. I don't think it's actually the purchase of an asset. It's really just an operating expense.
And
Well,
what,
regardless of where it sits, we've got it in 2 places right now.
Correct. Correct. But I think it's, as Jason said, I don't think capital's fully, we're fully on board yet. In my conversations with the chief, because it's not in the collective bargaining agreement that the unions would, because they have to approve to wear them. And there is a federal and there is a state grant for a portion of the body cams. My suggestion was, if we need to upgrade the tasers, because they're, it's a safety issue that they're not, of the right standard, possibly looking at doing that separately, look at, adding that to the collective bargaining agreement, the language that we would need, and then look at the body cams as a FY24 project. And also look at it, from a grant opportunity in the interim. So basically, if, give it a shot to apply to the federal and state grants. And if we don't get that, then we talk about, coming back to the general fund.
Okay, so you're confusing me, Andrew. Are you saying you wanted to see the 10,603 left where it is? And it's got nothing to do with grants, it's got nothing to do with the CBA, and it should be here, and it's the right number?
So that the grants are for the body cams, not for tasers. The 10,000 will actually probably go up for the new tasers that we need. Right, but I don't know if we know that exact dollar amount yet.
Yeah,
So these-
in fact, I sent Andrew some info. I got a refresh quote. Possibly we could even do the taser portion this year, use some Harvard money and get it going. However, everything goes up. So I just got a quote, and January 1st, those prices could go up between 5 and 10%. So even with the body cam package, that's a quote for this day and time. Next July 1st, all that is, it's probably going to go up like everything else. So those are just numbers in today's sequence.
So Chief, in terms of, if we got rid of these tasers, got you the new ones, what would that cost be? And what did you have left on the Harvard funds that could help support that?
I believe right now, without even getting the refresh that's coming from Harvard any day now, I believe I have $11,700 in there. And then also I have a forfeiture account with, it's not off the top of my head, but I believe there might be $15,000 in that. And I just made an inquiry to the Worcester DA's office to see if we could use the money to pay for the first year on that. So I'm waiting for an answer, but easily funded the first year, which would be this fiscal year that we're in. And then going forward, it looks like that 10,000 number would turn, I don't have the paperwork in front of me. I believe it'll be about 19,000 a year to replace that $10,000 number.
Okay, so forget who's going to pay for it for a moment. Are you saying that in order to sign new leases for a whole new set of new tasers, you think the new lease payment would be, a rental payment would be 19,000 a year?
Yes. Starting July 1st for next fiscal year, and that would run for 4 years.
Okay, so obviously there's got some work on that number and we've got to get it out of capital and leave it here. That's what we're going to do. Okay, sorry, Andrew, keep going.
Yep. So I think that's, do we change this to 19 or do we leave it at 10 and we pay the 9 out of Harvard, et cetera, et cetera. But I think my suggestion would be to put on hold the body cams until next fiscal year or till a fall town meeting or something, once we have the CBA approved and we look at the grants, which most of them have a decision date of sometime in late Q1.
So for the new advisory members, Harvard used to be the primate center, now the bookstore over on Parmenter Road gives the town of Southborough every year $25,000 split to, and it's basically dedicated to the fire department and the police department 50-50. So chief has got another 12,500 about to come in, and it's adjusted for inflation. So I'm not sure what the exact number is, but it's something like 12.5.
So I think so, but if we put the tasers aside, I think the only real piece for the police is the additional communications officer. So I don't know if anybody has any questions on that or wants to cover it off.
Dispatcher.
Technically, same thing.
Okay. Okay. So everybody remembers when we met with Chief Paulus recently, where he came to meeting with the select board and asked for, made the case he needs 5 full-time dispatchers. He had 4. And when you do the math and try to cover the dispatch position 24/7, it's clear you need 4.8 or something like that. So he has got in this budget 5 full-time dispatchers.
Does this include the benefits?
Yeah.
No, the benefits are a separate line.
No, but I mean, it's going to affect the benefits because the person's going to go to full-time.
It could affect the benefits, Kathy. We don't know if it's
Why
somebody's going to
could
take
it?
them or not.
So
Somebody
you're
doesn't
saying-
have to take them.
I would just add,
Go ahead, Chief.
I would add, this has been on the radar for a year. I know if anybody watched the Board of Selectmen's meeting in November, we vetted through it. But I was actually very surprised when I looked at last year's advisory budget project and I read the narrative. I wish I had remembered it for the Selectmen's meeting, but I did put in there that I was going to ask for the 5th dispatcher in this coming budget in 23. So this has been on the radar for quite a while. We've just we've run it on a shoestring for years and we just can't do it that way anymore. There's 120 open shifts a year without even getting to the full-timers, their vacation time, sick time, leave of absence, if somebody leaves the department. So it's really a needed item.
Chief, once that's done, once you've got the 5th full-time dispatcher, are you in good shape personnel-wise for a while?
Yes, I had a discussion with Andrew yesterday on the dispatch side. We are going to keep part-timers. We absolutely need them to fill in when things happen. But it's just tough. They're part-timers. So when you have a lot of open shifts, they have other jobs, they have other careers. They might be available a day or 2 a week. So we're definitely going to keep the part-timers. And on the full-time side, no, we're good right now at 21. In fact, I think I've been over this in other forums. We have a problem, I wish we were up to full staff all the time, but you get one leaving and you hire one, and in a police profession, it literally can sometimes take about 1 year to advertise, find a police academy, send them to it, put them through field training and get them on the road. So that's an area where we're always seem to be trying to catch up. Very glad that we added the 2 extra bodies a few years ago, because it gives us a little cushion, you know, when that staffing fluctuates.
Okay, so now let's go back and I want to try to help Adam and I understand what we should use and carry as far as your salaries for fiscal year 23. Okay, so I'm just going to ask questions and try to get to the bottom of this because I still don't get this. Okay, so collective bargaining agreement is going to cover 3 years, correct? The new one. So it's going to start 7/1/22.
That's possible. There are times that it's really in the history since I've been here, nobody's ever gone to arbitration. But if they can't come to an agreement, probably the end result would be to go to arbitration, and those are usually 1-year contracts.
Okay, but generally they're 3-year contracts.
Yes,
Okay, now, in the collective bargaining agreement for the policeman, there is a concept called steps, correct?
correct.
Okay, but there's no lanes, correct? Like there is in full contract. Schools have steps and lanes. You just have steps, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, can you tell us what a step is?
It's just it's in the contract. So somebody's there a year, they go to step 2, they go to step 3, they go to step 4. So I believe there's 9 steps. So it takes about 9 years to get up to that top step.
Okay, so it's really based on time spent working.
So
Correct.
it's like a salary schedule?
Yes.
Okay.
If you look at the union contract, it's laid right out.
Here's the contract here.
Okay, so there's an amount for step 6, an amount for step 7, amounts for step 8 and 9. And where you fit in those steps depends on how long you have worked for the town of Southborough. Police
Correct. You
Department.
could almost say it's a seniority step.
Okay, now, what happens after step 9?
That's where they're frozen, and then they would only get contractual raises. So say it's 2%, they would get, you know, they're maxed out on their step rate. And the PS8 that you see, that's for sergeants. So PS7 is for patrol officers, PS8 is for sergeants, and then the detective has a special rate as well.
Okay, so stay on this slide for a moment. Let's look at PS7, where we've got, it says 2% next to it. And if you go from step 1 to step 2, that's not 2%, unless I'm doing the math right. So
Kathy, the 2% is the year over year. So like step 1, PS7 was 989, now it's 1,008.
okay, so there's my, okay, so there, okay, I get it now.
So that's your kind of cost of living 2%.
Okay, all right, so this is starting to make sense. Now, if I am going to go from step 1 to step 2, I'm going to go from 989.09. I don't know, is this weekly? What is this? 103.4.
Weekly, I believe.
Okay, so I'm going to go from 989 to 103.4, which is obviously more than 2%, right? So I've got, that's what I'm going to get. So that makes sense. Okay, so I got this now. So as far as what is built into your current budget, Chief, this is where I'm really not understanding what's going on with your budget. So go keep that up there, Andrew. That helps seeing that. Sorry.
Well, let me show you the actual budget again.
Just to clarify also with what Kathy was asking. So there was like the 2021 steps and then the 2022. So if you're step 1 of 2021, your salary in 2022 is the next column over within that 2021 group. It's not step 2 within 2022.
So that there's the time horizon and then there's the steps. So if you look at let's find a good example here. Officer Whalen, right? Sergeant Whalen here. He was step 6 during this time horizon. And then he went to step 7. And then it'll be step 7 for this time horizon and then move to step 8.
And those kick in on your anniversary date, not the first of the year. So halfway through the year, you might hit your anniversary date, and then you make that step rate. Where you see 2% above them, that's the contract. So what Cindy's done here is she has all these dates, that those are on their anniversary dates. That's when they move.
Got it.
So what does that's the contract mean? That's what so Andrew, you really would have to go back to the schedule in the agreement.
Yeah, but Kathy, you see here, like for the sergeants that are already at PS8s, they were at 3817.
Yep.
And they're at 3817 for fiscal year 23.
Okay.
So the step increases are in here, like for Officer or Sergeant Whalen, right? But the dollar amount here, this 3742, was what it was in this chart for fiscal year 22.
How can the step be in there when the steps haven't been determined yet?
He's just there right now. His budget's using the FY 22 steps, dollar amounts.
Okay.
So he's not increasing the pay. He's keeping it flat. The rate's flat.
Okay,
But
we
he's
stay
using-
on Michael Whalen. Okay, so stay on Michael Whalen,
Yeah.
right? Okay, so he is saying from 1/8/23, he is going up. He's going up from 3633 to 3742.
Correct, but that's 1496, which is the current contract amount, not the new contract amount.
Okay, he's just saying this contract carries over to next year. Okay, now I get it.
Correct. So it's basically the dollars and the steps are flat, right? The weekly pay per step is flat for his budget, but he did incorporate when people are moving steps.
Can I go back to it again?
Right, 1496.
Okay. All right, so he's going,
Right, he was 1453 and he moved to 1496, 1453, 1496.
Okay.
Right, so this is the current rate card. There will be another one effective July 1, 2022. Because this contract ends on June 30th, 2022. Right,
Yes.
that's why there's only a 0.5% increase.
We haven't forecasted anything for the future because there's no agreement in place.
Correct.
So say a Kevin Landry who's maxed out on his steps, whatever you see right there, he's just gonna carry it.
Correct. So
all
he
right,
had,
let's stay on Kevin Landry then. Okay,
so Kevin, you know, for the last 2 quarters has been 3279. And for next year, he'll be at 3279 based upon this.
all right,
But
so
in
it's-
between
okay.
there's a new collective bargaining that will ask for a increase to that.
Okay, which is what I'm just calling the COLA, right?
Correct.
He stepped out. He's no more steps for him. So he's gonna get a COLA. Agree, Andrew?
Correct. Hit the rates of the step will increase just like they did here. 2%, 2%, 2%, 0.5%.
All right, so he'll get the step increase, whatever the 8 is, the max is. He'll get the new max, right?
Correct. He'll go from 1526 to whatever the new max is. And I believe in Chief's negotiating abilities to keep it at 1526.
That's Mark Purple's area.
All right, so the conclusion is the salaries line is low because it doesn't reflect the adjustments that are going to be made once this agreement is signed
Correct.
for everybody that adjusts during the year.
Yeah, it sounds like it would be at least 2%, right? Instead of 0.5%.
Yeah, it would be at least 2. It would be most likely 2% if we had to. I mean, but then
Well,
again,
that-
it's negotiation. We don't know.
So go back, Andrew, and put 2 in, see what it does to his budget.
It changes the overall budget from 3% to 4.4.
It would seem that that would be the assumption that we should work off of.
Yeah, I think the issue is the town administrator doesn't want to show that. But we can,
We'll talk about it. So what they do is they actually do estimate it and then they put it someplace other than salaries. So that it's in there, it's in a budget. It does not cost us because he needs to be able to negotiate. He doesn't want anybody to understand what he thinks the number should be, which is fair, right?
okay.
Okay, all right. Okay, now can we go back to the budget again? Okay, so we know we've got an issue with the salary line. We know we've got to do something there as far as our work goes. As far as
Yeah,
the
so
taser
that would change this from 1.7 to 3.3, just so people know.
Okay, so as far as the taser line item goes, it sounds like Chief is ready to get that done now and possibly go ahead and front load the first year with Harvard money.
Correct, if I can get approval for that. I gave it to Mark today to take a look at.
All right. So Andrew, will you take a look at that too? So we can
Yeah,
get the number
yeah.
put away. Okay. Other than that, is there anything else here to worry about? You've got you know you got one car on the capital plan, right, Chief?
Correct.
One electric car.
Well, it'll be a hybrid. So usually right off the top, I know right now, last year's model, we're getting $5,000 from the Green Communities money. And then also whatever the gas savings is, but that's in Karen's budget. And I was listening earlier and somebody asked why the cars cost that money. So right now, off the top of my head, a gas Ford Explorer Police Edition would be about $42,000. The hybrid model is about $47,000-$48,000. And then the rest of that is just the equipment that goes in the vehicle. And it's endless. It's lights, it's cages, it's computers, it's light bars and all this stuff. The prices have, really just skyrocketed. And the installation of it, the prices have skyrocketed. And it used to be the old Crown Vic police cruiser package that everybody's used to seeing. And then it was in effect for years and years and years. The model didn't change. So when we got a new cruiser, we'd swap parts out of it, the cages, some of the lights, etc. But they seem to change the model on these every few years now. So by the time that you refresh a cruiser, you can't use any of the old stuff. And frankly, we use a frontline cruiser for about 5 years. And when we get a new model, you got to replace all that stuff. It's at the end of life anyway. So that's why they cost so much. It's in what they call it, upfitting the cruiser.
Does that make sense, Marcy?
Yeah, thank you for that, Chief Paulus. The cruiser seemed to make sense to me, but I was just curious about the number which matched the pickup truck to the fire with the fire chief, I believe it is. So I appreciate
It's
that
actually,
explanation. Thank you.
It's pretty interesting. If you send me an email tomorrow, I can just attach the quote and it breaks it down every single line item. So if you're interested, I'll send it to you.
Sure, thank you. Appreciate that.
So Andrew, why is computer repair and maintenance in Chief's budget?
Which one? Which line item is that?
5.2, so line 30, as far as Excel.
I think this is because there's certain things that are specific, and we kind of talked about this, and there's certain software and computers that are specific to the police that come out of his budget. Right, Chief, you want to explain the IMC and that kind of stuff?
Yeah, that's a software system. Actually, police and fire use it, but we carry it in our budget. And that software is expensive. And then there's a little bit left over where we have it to fix certain things. I know the laptops and the cruisers. I know there is talk about putting that line item and that equipment in Jason's budget going forward.
Yes,
Yeah.
and we'll talk to him about that. That's why I brought it up, because there is talk about trying to
Yeah,
get-
Kathy, I brought that up with Chief is, I think we need to come up with some kind of policy in terms of, why is he paying for the assessor's software, but Chief Paulus is paying for his own software, right? Or, the policy is centralized software like Office 365 or, something like that, that all departments use is centralized and department specific software gets their budget, right? But I think we need to have a policy either way that's, applied accordingly.
All right. Okay, so I'm just gonna look. So Andrew, obviously you've got your questions answered. This is your budget. Marcy, anything else you want to ask Chief?
Andrew, if you could scroll down, I only had one other question for Chief Paulus, and it's probably an easy one to answer, which is, what is the line item of in-state travel that's gone from 97 up to 1,200? Just curious about that. Is that local travel, or what does that mean? That's line item 49.
I believe that the 1,200's what we spend, what we budget for. The other line items is what we've spent in the past.
Okay.
So it might be very little. There might be some specialized training for somebody in state. Let's say it might be in Springfield, and say it was for DARE classes for the school, and the officer might stay overnight for a few days to pay for that. A lot of it is mass pike tolls.
Okay.
To come out of that, certainly during COVID or whatever, all that was cut down. Somebody might have to do an investigation somewhere, maybe the North Shore, where we'd have to go up there. But yeah, that we budget 1,200, and frankly, we really spend the full amount. But that's what we budget. I don't think that's changed in the 8 years I've been here.
Thank you. That's helpful. My question was relative to COVID. I was just wondering if travel had gone down, and you answered that. So the other is under dues and memberships, line 51. What types of dues, just for our learning experience here, are we paying for?
Some of it might be off the top of my head. I belong to the National IACP Chiefs Association, the Massachusetts Chiefs Association, the Central Massachusetts Chiefs Association. We have our accreditation association membership. Several offices might belong to the Southborough Rod and Gun Club to keep a membership there, because that's where we do our firearms qualifying. So all things of that nature.
Thank you.
And I would, Kathy, we didn't touch on it before, but for the new members, Chief historically has been one of the best departments at turnbacks. Usually he always turns back money at the end of the year, and he's pretty frugal with what he spent. So we always appreciate that.
We do indeed. Okay, so Marcy, is that it for you? Adam? Anything else?
Yeah, a couple quick questions. So one kind of related to what Marcy asked about the in-state travel, but I'm curious with the training, employee trainings. I'm a big proponent in training, so I like to see the number that you have there. But curious about, in past years, it's been about 8 to 10K. Is there a plan to spend the 15 and do more training than you've done in the past, or where did the 2022 number end up rolling up, since this is just a request that we have here, not the actual?
Yeah, that's been tough with COVID as well. We were basically almost shut down for probably a year and a half. Big benefit to the new public safety building. We actually have that classroom, and we've been hosting professional classes, mainly from the Municipal Police Institute. They come in, they give a class. If there's a certain number of people signed up, we get free training. So we'll have officers go to that. Always looking for stuff that's available to send the officers to. That line item would just be for paying tuitions for officers to go to classes. Of course, the main driver is you get the class paid for, but it's sending the officer on overtime. So that also, the big money comes out of the overtime budget, but Even if you look at the $15,000, 21 offices, break it down per officer, it's not a big number. A lot of training is going online now. We take advantage of all the online training that we can get, but that training room, we've used it a good deal in the last 6 months or so. But we're at it again. We have more mandates and mass mandates, so that's probably going to slow up going forward. But for the times we've used it, it's been a fantastic addition to the department. And I know it's the same on the fire side as well.
Yeah, that's
So
great.
Chief, what do you think about reducing that 15 to 10 then?
I hate to touch training. I mean, if it's there, we don't use it. I think, like you said earlier, I budget for what we need. If I don't need it, you'll get it back.
The two other line items I was curious about was the court duty and the stipend specialty pay. If you can provide a little more context on, I think the court duty went higher than it's gone, and same thing, I guess, for 2022, higher than it's gone in the past by quite a bit. And then the stipends just seems like really volatile. So just wondering what went into that.
I'm trying to take a look at it here. Stipends are contractual.
Stipends were row 24. So it was
Yeah,
0 in 21. I don't know if that's a COVID thing, but
No, yeah, that would be, I don't know why that is there.
It might all be in this because it's the same line item, 51950.
Okay,
okay,
It's probably down here.
yeah.
I see.
Stipend also increased. That was part of my contract negotiation where I got a stipend for the department being accredited. But the rest of it is just all contractual. It doesn't move.
Yeah, combining 24 and 25, that makes a lot more sense. I missed that one. So then, yeah, the court duty was the other one. I was curious. Seems to have bounced around quite a bit.
So the 2.1 is so I think they actually did use that. They forecasted with an increase for some of the longevity and things. So that you'll see a 2.1% here, a 2.1% on overtime. So the overtime went up basically assuming the rates, but just not the salaries.
Okay, and of course, it's down, Adam, fiscal 21 because of COVID, because they didn't go to court anywhere near as much because courts were shut down.
Yeah, exactly.
So I could see why that one's that one. What does stipend defibrillator mean?
Contractual, that was here when I arrived. Each officer gets a $500 stipend for being certified in using the defibrillator.
Each
So-
year to year.
Yes, and we're trained each year. I think if you were looking, we just recognized some officers who saved a life with the defib recently, last month. But we carry them right in the cruises, and probably any medicals, we usually get there first because we're driving around on the road. That was a capital item last year. The defibrillators that we had were about, I think, 12 years old. Was $18,000. We replaced the defibs in every cruiser. But they're a great tool to have. When we run into a medical, I know the officers just grab them and they bring them in with them. But that's contractual, $500 per officer.
Okay.
Yeah, no other questions for me. Thanks, Chief.
Timothy?
Hey, just one question. Andrew, could you scroll down a little bit, please? I was just wondering, line 48, the uniforms, is that on a 2-3 year cycle? Or is that every year?
Also contractual, each officer gets $950. However, it's a little more than that because it's in the contract that the town picks up the cost for all their leather gear that they wear on their duty belts. And then also new officers, when they come on, they have to get outfitted. So the department buys them their complete set of first year uniforms, which can be $2,000 per officer. So we usually look at the first $950 per officer is contractual, and then we probably just do a 3-year average on the rest of it, unless we're anticipating hiring a new officer coming up, so we might account for that.
That's all. Thank you.
Where is Tom? There he is. Okay, Tom.
I said two things. Andrew, can you scroll up to like, I think it's like lines 5 and 6, which just goes to that dispatcher swap out. I just want, so this was taken, the part-time one being taken out, replaced by the full one. You said it was like a roughly $30,000 difference.
Correct. Yeah, this one was, so it was reduced from 25 to 12.
Okay,
And then the overtime was reduced as well. And then, so it's basically $20,000 reduction here, then $23,000 reduction, and then the salary is about 53. So net 30,000.
so there's still part-time for next year, right? It goes from
Right.
25. Okay,
The chief wanted to keep some part-time just in case, because you might still have shifts that need to be covered,
Some-
and he has
okay.
some part-time people.
and then one other, on that other, remember when you were going through the individual officers, that other page?
Yep.
On the far right, yeah, there was something called Quinn that showed up for some of them, like a large amounts, but then not at all for others. I just had no clue what that was.
Yeah, I'll let chief explain Quinn bill.
We could probably spend a good amount of time on this. So,
Please don't.
Quinn bill was initially, I guess, funded by the state. And I'm not sure. I came from Rhode Island in 2014 over here. Quinn bill's legendary, even in Rhode Island. So the state funded a program where I believe the officers, if they had a degree in a criminal justice related field, that they'd get 10% of their pay for an associate's degree, 20% of their pay for a bachelor's degree, and a 25% raise for a master's degree. And the offices that you see listed with the Quinn bill, they're Quinn bill eligible. Those are all officers hired previous to 2009 in the town of Southborough. All the officers hired after 2009 went to an educational stipend, a flat rate amount for an associate's degree, a bachelor's degree, a master's degree. But it's not, so you'll see another line item for
Education incentive.
educational incentive. So those are for those officers hired after 09, but it's not as lucrative as the Quinn bill offices.
So 2009 is the cutoff?
Yes. So if you went to that other page, all the officers listed with Quinn bill, they would be hired prior to 09.
That was a good explanation.
Oh, thanks.
That's all
Is
I
that
had.
okay, Tom?
Yeah, I was just curious. There was a large amount showing up for a few of them and couldn't figure out what that acronym was for. So
So you might call it that the state started the program and now it's kind of an unfunded liability that the town picked up.
that's what I was going to ask. Okay. So the town's on the hook. So
Yep.
someone who got in before 2009 just continues to get that, right?
And
As long
some
as they're-
departments carried the full amount of Quinn bill. And that's something that the profession's going through, is that those departments that still offer the full Quinn bill opportunity are obviously a very attractive destination.
Sure. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Okay, so Andrew, one more time, go all the way to the bottom. Okay, so now go to the salaries line increase again, the yellow above. So that's 68,000. 30 of that is for the full-time dispatcher, all the net of the three numbers, right? So half of that is just dispatcher, almost half of it. So there's really not much here other than what's going to happen with the new contract. That's what we got to worry about. Okay, and then we got to get the tasers figured out as far as what to do with those. Okay, but you're happy with the one car, correct?
Yeah, I base it on what we need, and I look at the mileage and what's on the front line, and I go from there. So I have a formula, and that's how it works out this year.
All right, any other questions for the chief? So thank you for coming in so late, Chief Paulus. It's always good to see you.
Oh, Chief Achilles told me he always likes to go late because he's a night owl, so.
I knew that. I knew that. That's why we did
You
him
can always
last.
schedule him second. One other thing, before I sign off, kudos to our business administrator, Cindy McLeod. As you can see, there is a lot of tedious math here. And then also she handles the detail billing, which I believe this year added up to a gross of somewhere close to $1.5 million. And that's also a lot of very tedious math. She does an absolutely outstanding job, as did Rick Mattioli before her. So I couldn't do it without her. And then also for anybody, I think we said it at the beginning of the meeting, that doesn't know me very well or hasn't met me, please just shoot me an email and come over to the Public Safety Building. I'll give you a tour. I'm an expert on giving tours now. So, anytime, Monday through Friday, we'll drop in and we'll take a walk.
Well, we miss having our meetings there, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's great there.
Yeah, so that's what advisory used to meet. Okay, so thank you. I'm sure we will be in touch, but this was great.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a great night.
You too. Thanks, Chief. All right, so I'll bring Chief Achilles over.
Yeah.
I should bring, oh, Claire's there. I'm gonna bring Claire over too.
What happened to Claire? She got kicked out? There he is.
Good evening, everybody.
Hey, Chief.
The reason I had to go after Chief Paulus is this is like 3 hours after his bedtime.
Oh, we knew that. That's why we put him on first.
You pull up your budget there, Chief.
So everybody, this is Chief Achilles, who has been our fire chief for, help me, Chief. I was way
Almost
off
3
on
years.
3 years. Okay,
Almost 3 years.
I said 3 or 4 for Chief Paulus, which is less than half of his. So 3 years.
Yep. So, Chief's is pretty similar to Chief Paulus. Same kind of idea. The steps are in here, but the any CBA increase is not. So that's why his budget is pretty much flat. On the salaries, there's not a whole lot.
Are you?
Pull it
Oh, I'm
up.
not sharing it. Oh, let me share it again. Zoom in a little bit. All right. Let me freeze the top here. All right. So yeah. So in terms of salaries, there's not a whole lot of increase, as I said. One thing that Chief did this year, and Kathy, I think I would like Brian and Carla. So they created new line items to separate overtime for training and some of the other items you'll see in yellow. I would like them to try to restate the history, because it's really hard to do it without that. So you'll see one of the things that Chief added in is he's trying to add some additional training, and he separated out overtime to cover that training. And Chief, I'll let you why don't you just cover off on like the new line items, the yellow ones?
Yeah, and for, I think, Adam and Tom and Marcy, a couple things, and actually for the rest of the committee, is you received our strategic plan and our standard cover. So those are the basis for a lot of the decisions made in the budget. And those will be the basis, hopefully going forward for the next 5 years. This is my third budget, and trying to call out or identify items that were kind of lumped together for better accounting. So these were my suggestions, working with Brian and Carla. To Andrew's point, overtime to cover training, it was never there. It was just built in to the general overtime budget. So this is our attempt to identify specific, an earmark, if you will. And then I think as we move forward, we'll be able to track it. And this is for professional development, credentialing of the individuals, competency-based training, and hopefully succession planning. So that's why you see it out there. The on line 20, computer software and support, it was all lumped into line 19, computer repairs and maintenance. The computer software and support, much like the police department, we have specific software that we use for and licensing we use for station alerting, our records management system, our training that we pay for. And I wanted to pull that out and make it more specific so we could track that. So that's in line 20. If you go down to line 30, ambulance billing service fee, I think Kathy is familiar with this, and Andrew, the fact that when we bill out for ambulance services, we have a company that does the billing, and they get a small percentage if they collect. That was in our contracted services line, number 32. And we pulled that out, and it's up a little bit. We're on track this year, hopefully, to do very well. COVID was not a good year for ambulance revenue, but we're on track right now to be around $25,000 to $26,000 that we'll have to pay our contracted services. So that's a direct result of increased revenues. So we pulled that out.
And Kathy, one of my, just on that one of my suggestions to Chief is that should really be part of the ambulance fund, as like a contra revenue. It's the cost to send the bill to put the revenue in the account. I mean, if that shouldn't go into that, I don't know what should.
I agree, but that's just an accounting thing, so I agree.
Yeah, but the problem is if it goes up, his budget looks bad, but if it goes up, it's good because we're making more money on the other side.
Right. And I think this will help us track it much better. And then you'll see if it goes up or goes down. The accreditation and credentialing, that process that I outlined, I think you got in our budget narrative, kind of explains that. I don't want to use up a lot of time tonight, but there are fees associated with that. I just came back from a workshop that was required. And as we move forward through the process, there'll be other fees. This may not all get used in 1 year. It depends on how fast we progress through the credentialing and accreditation process. So this is a best guesstimate. Now we have two other lines that are new, 34 and 35. These are specifically accounting internal to the department that we often have expenditures for facility supplies that would not be covered by facilities. As most of you are aware, we run 24 hours a day. We have dormitories, we have kitchens, bathrooms, we have washing machines. So these are costs. The other facility supplies are costs associated with basically running the department. It would be your, I call it like the household items that in your own house that you have that are specific and that we don't have facilities cover. And then the other next line is other training supplies. Again, we had no line to put this in. As you know, some of you know, at the new public safety building, we have a training tower, training room, and we often make our own props. And we buy equipment to do the training, like a smoke machine, or we spend a lot of money on lumber this year building props for the firefighters. So we had no specific line to take that out. It was kind of put in different lines. So this was more of an accounting purposes. So that's where you'll see that. I think overall, and I'll speak to our budget, is about 2.1%. You had the discussion with the police chief about what's included, what's excluded in the contract. I mean, I'm sorry, in the budget. I agree with the town administrator. You don't want to put a known number of contractual increases in here because we're in the middle of negotiating, and that's not a good practice to to come up with a number. We can forecast some of it, but what comes out in the end, hopefully by July, they have a contract and that money's carried. But the rest of the budget's I think it's a pretty strong budget. We made some revisions over the last 3 months to get it down to about 2.1, 2.2%.
You'll see some reductions, especially in parts and vehicle maintenance because of the newer vehicles that the chief is requesting and has gotten over the past couple of years.
So Chief, have you gotten the new fire truck? Has it been delivered?
Yes, Kathy, you gotta watch our Facebook page. It's been delivered.
Sorry,
And
I don't do Facebook.
okay, I'll have to email and actually, in that post, we appreciate the support of advisory and capital along with the select board of supporting these projects. That new engine's has gone in service. It actually responded in reserve to the fire we had on Framingham Road early Friday morning.
Yeah. Okay, good. So that's a good thing. Can we talk about something that is in the back of my mind, and I don't remember what Jason Malinowski said to me, but he did say something to me at some point about let me just call it the radio equipment in the new building, for which quite a bit of money was spent, over $300,000. Is it in good shape?
So the radio equipment in the building is responsible both the police and fire departments.
Yeah.
The radio equipment in the building in the dispatch area is almost 3 years old. It has a useful life of 10 years.
Okay.
And we are projecting it 10 years that will have to be replaced. The radio equipment that you don't see in the building that is located throughout the town at different radio sites, that's in relatively operating condition. We have a service contract just in case we have issues with that. But that will have to be evaluated of when that needs to be replaced. I suspect that some of it will need to be replaced at that 10-year cycle. Some will have to be replaced a little bit earlier. And then the other component of radios is every police and fire and public works has mobile and portable radios. And you'll see on our capital plan that we are having plans to replace some radios for emergency management this year. And out year, we have a plan to replace the portable radios, and the mobile radios will come out later.
So have the problems that you used to have with connectivity when you were over like on my road, Pine Hill Road, as far as getting back across the hills, have they been alleviated with the changes that were made to the Overlook Drive tower? Or you still got issues as far as not being able to basically hear every place?
Overlook received a generator. The site has not been improved. What we did as a stopgap last year is we moved to a digital radio frequency versus our transmission different than analog. And that gave us a little bit more range, but we still have some gaps in the system, not as bad. But that's predicated on how well the components work. So we're in good shape right now, but I can't tell you that it's a very resilient system that is prepared for any big, we have any glitches, they're going to be pretty obvious pretty quick.
And the boat, you've got the new boat, right?
Yep.
And do you know whether you are going to need a reserve fund transfer for that at this point? I know it's early in the year, but do you still think it's?
We're still working in the budget. One of the expenditures that we did not anticipate or identify is we had a lieutenant retire, and we have to do a promotional exam by contract that has to be done by an outside agency. And we'll have an expense minimally just about $7,000. And if we have a lot of good candidates, and if it takes a second day, it will be an extra $3,500. So there's $10,000 that we're not anticipated. We will do everything to stay within our budget, but we're just ending the second quarter. I think we'll have a better picture by when we get at the end of the third quarter where we're at.
Well, I know it's early, but I just thought you might have had a windfall someplace that you said, oh no, I know we're going to be okay. We don't need the reserve fund. So, okay, so we've got it reserved. So no issue.
Kathy, that's already moved.
I know. But it's still,
That
okay,
wasn't
so
a
we
placeholder, right?
she's actually moved it over. She's taken it
Right,
out.
we
of reserve
approved
fund.
that, so I don't think it's still in the reserve. It wasn't a placeholder.
Okay, I don't think she's moved it though, Andrew. I don't think Carla's actually taken it out of the reserve fund. So, all right, so maybe it is a moot point. I don't think it's been moved officially. We may have approved it, but I don't think she has moved it. So I think she still has the ability to come back and say, you can come out with this budget. All right, so I will check on that. All right, so Adam, any questions for Chief Achilles?
Well, first I wanted to say, Chief Achilles, nice to meet you, and really fantastic job on everything you sent us. This, strategic landscape view that you sent and the narrative. I'm still going through it, to be honest with you. It's a lot of information, but really nicely done there. And I love to see the vision that you have for the whole team. I guess some of the questions I have related to all of that really is with more what you put down as maybe weaknesses or threats. Do you feel like there's any serious risk that is not being addressed by your budget, or places where you had noted even a couple places that you weren't able to put any budget towards? I guess any thoughts or comments on that, or things that we should be considering that aren't in here?
Last year when we had this similar discussion, so we were making our best guesses. I think this process of community-driven strategic plan really helped us focus. So really 2022 calendar year, we're going to start some of those strategic initiatives. Some are going to take a while. And I think if you look at all of them, they'll have a cost analysis that has to go with it. So I think we'll be a better picture next year. We also realize if there's something serious happening that is outside that plan, or all of a sudden we'll have to address. One area that we spoke about or introduced maybe over the course of the year is our tower. The largest vehicle we have is about 10 years old. We're having to assess its motor, and we're gonna send it to a dealer, the motor dealer, the Cummins engine dealer, just to have it run through its paces to make sure where it's at. And that's something we're gonna have to kind of keep our eye on over the next year and see what that means. But other than that, I think through contractual discussions and the strategic plan, I think we're in pretty good shape, or poised at least for the next year or so.
Okay, great. And then on the supply chain risk that you had mentioned in your narrative, is there any line items here that we need to maybe think about sensitivity around, that if things come in much higher cost than we're anticipating right now, we need to be aware of it? Anything there?
We had ordered an ambulance. It was approved under capital. We ordered back in, I think in the summer, And now it's projected to use the supply chain and COVID, whatever you want to call it. We would have seen it delivered already. It's now anticipated out into next July. So the ambulance that we were going to replace, we have to keep it running now. The pickup truck that we've had on the plan for the last 3 years, we're trying to make that last longer. And I don't know. I mean, hopefully the supply chain, we can get a pickup truck after July next year in the right time. So tenuous is the vehicle repair and maintenance parts we're having some issues with. And we're also seeing some increase in some of our medical supply costs. That's a fixed line. And if we get busier or the costs go up, those will be a little more challenging. But I think if we keep an eye on it and we stay within budget and we'll readjust and prioritize, I think we'll be okay. But we have to pay attention to those.
No other questions at this time. Thank you.
Thanks, Adam.
Tom?
I don't have any questions right now. It's good to meet you and thank you for your time. And,
Thank you, Tom.
look forward to meeting you in person.
Yeah, please. And
when
like
we're
the
allowed to
police,
do so.
as the police chief said, we're open a little bit more than we were before. And if for those that haven't been to the fire station, it's a good understanding how we work, what it looks like, some of the things that are in this budget, some of the things are in capital, you can see them and understand scope and breadth. Please email me and we'll set up a time.
Sounds
Marcy?
good. Thank you.
Nice to meet you, Chief Achilles.
Hi, Marcy.
I'm still going through everything, but I want to echo what Adam said. I thought your strategic plan was so well done, and I appreciate that you're pulling these items out on the budget so that it's more clear about what things are being spent on. That's really great. I will feel free to email you if I have additional questions, but for now I don't have any others.
Thank you, Marcy.
Dan?
I don't have any questions tonight.
Are you getting off easy tonight, Chief?
Well, and again, it's I appreciate the time that advisory is putting into this. I think the budget process is a good process and very transparent. If there's any questions, please ask.
And Chief, especially considering that he's now a taxpayer.
And I am a taxpayer, so even
There you go. So we're trying to save you some money here, Chief.
I appreciate that.
All righty. So thank you very much. And I'm sure we'll talk to you soon.
All right. Thanks again.
Bye-bye.
Good night. And Merry Christmas.
Same to you. Same to you.
Right.
Okay, so let's get this wrapped up. So chair's report's pretty easy. So we're almost there as far as having our OneDrive advisory folder set up. So long story short, for those who know how Office 365 works, apparently the license the town has doesn't allow committees to basically have their own separate OneDrive folder, like you would at work, where if you've got Office 365, you got your own OneDrive, right? So we need to basically latch on to someone else who is a true town employee. So last year, Brian Ballantyne had basically set up a subfolder for advisory under his OneDrive folder. Andrew Pfaff has got this moved over now with Jay, so it's under Jay. Jay has set it up. Jay Montijo has set it up. So we're going to have our OneDrive folder moved over. He has started moving all the documents that were in the old one over. So we hope by the end of this month, we will have everything moved over. So you've got a good access to all the documents. He's going to send you a link so that you can just bookmark the link, go right to it. So the next week or so, you should see that with all the budgets in it, all the narratives in it, all of our perm documents in it, etc. So that's coming. So hopefully that'll be easier to keep track of things. We'll put the minutes there too. So
Yeah, and the reason behind doing that is because then I am the owner. So I'm the owner right now. So I can add people, restrict access, etc. So I think right now we all have access, but we all have full edit access and things of that nature. So, files can get deleted, overwritten. I think there's certain things that somebody needs the pen on, and in certain folders should need to be controlled. So that was the main reason there.
And Brian's going to copy every update of the Excel workbook to that. So we'll have those in real time. We won't have to be slopping those back and forth like we did last year. So I'm hoping it's going to be a little bit efficient. When we come back in January, we should have everything in one place and be a little bit easier to get to and have a little bit better control over it. So there's that. So Tim, to expand on the conversation about clear.gov, I don't know exactly what Brian didn't like about it, but he didn't like it. And just decided it wasn't worth the cost. Because the cost was pretty significant. It was, I don't know, $25K or so a year to license it. So he didn't think it was worth what we're getting from it. There were things about it that I miss. I think Andrew Pfaff misses. But overall, I think he just didn't think it was useful enough. Claire, I'll talk to you later about the answer to that. Okay, so there's that one. I think that's it for my chair's report. Anything else anybody want to talk about before we ask for public comment? So we're going to meet every Wednesday starting in January for the 6 weeks. We should be able to get through all the budgets in those 6 weeks. Schools should be done by the very tail end. They come in last. And of course, the biggest one comes in last because it's so hard to do. So we should have the budgets done. Mark Purple has sent me today the list of the non-money, non-administrative warrant articles. So I will get those posted in the next couple of days so you can see those. So we got to start talking about those. So once we get to the budgets, we go right to the other warrant articles that do need deliberation and discussion, not the ones that are just always routine. There's a bunch that are routine that we don't spend much time on, but there are always going to be some that require quite a bit of time. I haven't seen them yet, not sure what all they are, but there will be something that we'll have to spend time on. So that's kind of how the schedule is going to work. Right now, we still think town meeting is March the 26th because we don't know otherwise. So that's what we're aiming for. So we'll see how it goes once we get to next year. But of course, the virus doesn't look like it's going the right way again. So we will see. It's kind of hard to think we're going to be in a big auditorium all packed in March 26th, the way things look right now. But maybe we will. All right. Anything else from anybody?
So Kathy, we don't have a placeholder in there if we want to do anything to the advisory bylaw, right? Or are we just pushing that off for
No,
now?
and if we, well, do you want to bring it up? Do you want to do that this year?
I don't know if we need to, but I don't know. Just
I mean, I'm happy to put a placeholder in just so there's a placeholder, and then we can put it on the agenda to discuss when we come back as far as whether we really want to entertain changing the bylaw to allow an advisory member to sit, one member to sit on the permanent capital investment plan committee.
I think it also would depend if they had a seat on there appointed by the moderator or a couple seats, then.
Yeah, okay, so some permutation of that question, right? Some version of allow advisory to participate. I just don't know.
You'll need to get with Jason and have him update his bylaw, right?
Well, he wrote it in a way that, I don't think so. He wrote it in a way that we can do that. If advisory changes the bylaw, there's a place for us.
I'm sorry, does Jason's bylaw allow a moderator appointment?
No.
So that's the change.
Yes, that part, yes, that part would, yes, he does not do that. So yes, that part would have to change.
I just don't see town meeting allowing it unless it's a moderator appointment.
I think the moderator appointment would improve things for sure.
Which there are, like Northborough's are moderator appointed, and a lot of the other towns do it. It's not like it's unheard of.
All right, so let's discuss it. Yeah. Let's discuss it. So I'll get Mark to put a placeholder for it, so we'll discuss it. All right, anything else before?
I'm sorry, if they update theirs to include a moderator appointment, then we don't have to change ours at all because it would be consistent. Right?
Yeah. Well, it says a moderator appointed committee. So if you believe that a moderator appointed participant is the same thing as a moderator appointed committee, no, but I'm not sure it's the same thing, Tim.
Well,
so in other words,
I would think, personnel, not personnel board, but the Public Works Planning Board would qualify right now. That might be a good question for Jay Tellerman.
Well, moderator currently appoints 3 committees, right? Advisory, Personnel Board, and Public Works Planning Committee Board, whatever it is, right? Those 3 things. That's what that are. So we could sit right now on those permanent committees, the other 2.
But Public Works is what, 2 or 3 moderator and then 2 are planning board, I think, or something.
All right, so I didn't know that. So I thought that was strictly moderator. So you're saying it is part and part?
I believe it's part
So
and
you're
part.
right, it is, you're right, it is. There is a planning board appointed there, you're right. Okay, so there you go. So Tim, are you following this? So the advisory bylaw specifically says moderator appointed committee. It doesn't say moderator appointed partial committee. It says committee, as if it's the whole thing,
That's pretty gray.
right? So we'll talk about it. So I'll get it at least a placeholder, so we've got the ability to do this if we choose to do it. We're going to have to lobby some people, though, I think, to get it done. Okay. All right. Any public comment? Seeing none, would somebody please make a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second,
Second.
Second. Roll call vote. AP,
Aye.
Marcy,
Aye.
Adam,
Aye.
Tom,
Aye.
Tim.
aye.
Cook is ISO 6-0. So everybody have a really great holiday, and we'll see you the first Wednesday in January at 7:30.
Thank you. You as well.
See ya.
Thank you,
Y'all-
Kathleen.